Aaron Justis of Buds and Roses fame, South California's, one of their premier dispensaries. He's been in it for a while. He talks about what brought him to the industry and names some key players along the way. He's doing a great job down in SoCal, and he shares his story. Very much appreciated the conversation with Aaron. Okay, so just brought up Justis, no C, no E, right? So it's Aaron Justis from Buds and Roses, and I guess we have to get into, while we're talking about names, we have to get into, you're an LA guy.
Yeah.
So is there a Guns N' Roses connection?
Oh, I knew somebody would ask that at this event.
Yeah.
There actually is not. The woman that started Buds and Roses, she came from Israel, and she had heard of Guns N' Roses, and it was kind of like an LA thing, and she just put it out there, Buds and Roses.
Yeah.
And she really didn't market it or anything like that. That happened later, but we haven't had any issues with Guns N' Roses, but I hear Slash and other people live like close by, so
Sure.
maybe if they had a problem, they would have came and smashed some guitars or something. Who knows?
I'm just surprised to hear that they haven't come in as consumers.
Well, maybe they have.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. We'll
They
leave
haven't sued us for our name yet.
Yeah, exactly. So let's.
Unlike, I've never really talked about this. I was going to post it. I never did, but it comes to mind, and why not?
Yeah.
Girl Scout Cookies of America did send me a letter a couple years ago and said, quit using this name. But it wasn't my strain or anything.
Well, yeah, everybody's got it, right?
So
you know,
we had won a big competition with it, and we got that letter, and then I kind of put it to the side, and haven't heard anything since.
Because I was going to say I saw some Girl Scout cookies over at Medicine Man the other day.
I bet you did.
Yeah, exactly. So Pete Williams showed me, so it was good.
Oh yeah, he knows the stuff.
But as far as what's in a name, I said, well, Justice, that's justice, but for you, it's Justis.
Yep.
And then you laid one on me.
Yeah, so a lot of people, I don't talk about it often, but I was adopted at 2 months old, and I never knew who my birth parents were or anything.
Yeah.
But a couple years ago, I got my original birth certificate, and my birth name is actually Frank Gilbert Goldstein.
Well, it's good to have you as a member of the tribe. I guess I'll say that.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, exactly. But wow, that you just said a lot of different things there.
Yeah.
So how did you come upon the original birth certificate?
Well, I was born in Chicago in Cook County, and they were one of the toughest places to get your original birth certificate from. And a couple years ago, they just basically opened it up. So I just requested it, and truthfully, I was not even sure if I had a different name. I probably had asked my parents and forgot. But, yeah, I was surprised when I saw it. And
you were adopted as a cherub, so you don't remember that.
Right.
What do you know about the process, though? I mean,
Well, what's interesting is, my mother was Jewish, and but I was adopted through a Lutheran agency, and I'm not really sure how that happened, or it just doesn't matter, I guess.
Right.
But that's all I really know about it. I have an older brother to my parents, that raised me, and he's their biological child, but he's kind of a big guy, and he was a big baby, and my mom said, I don't want to do that again. I want to adopt, so.
Okay.
So she ended up with me.
All right. And then your birth parents, is there any connection there? Or?
I've found out who they are. We've talked on Facebook and things like that, but nothing, no face-to-face.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm kind of busy.
Kind of busy, exactly. You're doing stuff. We're going to talk all about that.
Right, yeah.
So we'll leave them over there, but then let's talk about your mother, who seems like an interesting person, to say the least. She gave birth once and said, F that noise.
Yeah, exactly.
And so how did she, come to adopt you?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. They just applied with an agency, and it happened. What was interesting, though, is my mom is Italian and Swedish, and so I grew up with a lot of Italian things and that for a while. And, it's, I guess, somewhat similar to the Jewish culture. And it was interesting. And my mom and I kind of look the same. Yeah. And my brother looks more like my dad. Yeah. And so everyone used to think my brother was the one that was adopted, not me. And I think it irritated him a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Which is always fun if I know brothers. That's
Well, he's my older brother, so too bad.
yeah, and it's the best. I
Right.
mean, you've got something on him.
That's right.
Which is fantastic. All right, so we've got older brother. How many years older is he?
4 years.
How's that relationship?
It's good.
Yeah.
He lives in Northern California. He's a small edible maker and a cook, chef. Yeah.
So he's industry.
That's right. That's right. It's a family tradition, I guess.
He's
So-
starting one at least.
Yep, that's right.
Northern California, you're Southern California.
Yeah.
But when you talk about your mother and father, you're talking about Illinois.
Yeah, Northern Illinois. Oh, one thing about my brother, it's his birthday today, so
Oh wow.
he won't hear this today, but
No.
happy birthday, John.
Indeed. And John, yes,
Yeah.
very happy birthday to you.
Yeah.
I think you're 42 today. Is that
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. There
so,
you go.
Congratulations. Enjoy. Take it easy.
Exactly.
All right. So Illinois, where in Illinois?
Rockford, Illinois,
Okay.
which is about 90 miles west of Chicago. And, it's a tough city to grow up in. It's considered the third most dangerous city in America. And I saw a lot of the worst things that happened because of the war on drugs. And it really motivated me to become an activist when I was about 19 years old, and I've pretty much stuck to that path.
So this is part of the reason is we actually want to get to know you. That's why we kind of go all the way back and do this. The other reason is to really understand why you're here. Who you are informs what you do. So you talk about the war on drugs and its ill effects in the third most dangerous city in America, which is very impressive, by the way.
Thank you. 2 of the top 25 most dangerous neighborhoods in America as well.
Wow. I
Jeez,
mean, these
so
are, I like to say it, these are good bona fides. So, which I think might be redundant. But anyway, you said at age 19, when did you kind of start to figure it out as a young man? What was actually happening?
It was Jack Herer's book. Well, I started using cannabis at about 17.
Okay.
The doctors tried to give me Ritalin for, I don't remember, ADHD or ADD. I know they're a little different. My mom actually worked at the hospital, and she was like, no way, you're not taking this. Let's find a different route.
Yeah.
And I ended up leaving my 3rd grade class. I was getting in a lot of trouble for being energetic, and I went into a program called CAPA, the Creative and Performing Arts. And so it was more like, dance, theater, things like that. And I at least did that throughout the rest of grade school, which pretty much helped. But I started using cannabis at about 17, and I don't think I really knew the medical benefits until maybe I was almost 30. I knew I liked it.
Okay.
I knew about the cause. The medical part of the cause was just kind of coming out back then, and Jack Herer was like one of the only guys talking about it. Other people just thought he was crazy. But I think that it became my medicine, so I really liked it. I saw what alcohol had done to people, and I thought, wow, this is way better than that.
Yeah.
I know that everyone says it's not the way to go, but I just thought for myself. And then I read The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and then I ended up going to NORML conferences. Then I ended up starting a hemp clothing company called J-Wear Hemp Clothing Company.
Right.
And it was like activist T-shirts and hemp apparel.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I fell into it.
So I just want to dot the line here because we went from 17 to 30, and I want to make sure that
Yeah.
we know the arc. When did you read the book?
Oh, about 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cannabis use, and then you started to kind of get involved, and then there you go. Now
Yep.
you're an activist. And when was your first NORML meeting, for instance?
Probably I have an autographed book from Jack Herer, 1998,
Okay.
in D.C.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you traveled to D.C.
That's right.
to go to that
That's right.
event.
D.C., Aspen, Florida, all kinds of places.
When you walked in the door, so you had read this book, this cannabis plant had touched you. You said you didn't understand the effects until you were about 30. Do you mean for others? Because
No, I meant for myself.
oh, you
medically.
did. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't really. I knew I liked it and everything, but well, I actually had a situation once where I was going to meet a friend
Yeah.
and for lunch, and I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I had just smoked, and then I got a phone call right before I walked into the restaurant, and it was another friend giving me pretty bad news, and I was bummed about it,
Yeah.
but I thought, I have to focus on my other friend here because I haven't seen him in so long,
Yeah.
and I remember I totally forgot about what just happened for about 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And at that point, I kind of felt like I realized its medical benefits because my mind is so active that it helps like suppress that
Yeah.
and just calms it down for a while.
Yeah.
And then I started realizing like that has a lot to do with why I use the cannabis.
Yeah. Interesting. So like the kinetic, you were understanding your kinetic mind
Yeah.
in real time,
Yeah.
finally for the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about this trip down to DC. Did you drive?
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's hard to remember, but I'll try. And it was a bunch of pot activists, so, and I was from Illinois. So.
Right. But this, obviously it's a progression,
Yeah.
but if you didn't have a productive time there, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be sitting here.
That's right.
So what do you remember?
Yeah, I remember that I was just really inspired by what people were saying. I was young, so there were attorneys and things like that there that were happy to see me.
Yeah.
And I just remember really Jack Harrer. He was selling his books, and I remember he said, and I went up to him and talked to him, and then he said, "Hey, can you watch my table for a while?" And he actually never came back to the table, and he had given me some books or something, and I remember I took them back home with me. I never paid for them, so I gave them out to everybody,
Yeah.
and then I like sent Jack a check, and I was like, "Hey, I gave these," so it was like charity, but I wanted to educate other people about it, and then kind of then I just liked it, so I went back to the next one and the next one. I just found like good, intelligent people that liked using cannabis.
Yeah.
They were giving me all these awesome facts, and it was great. It was great.
So,
but there was not any money to be made. I mean,
You're talking about the late 90s.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I was selling hemp clothing and T-shirts, and I was just losing money on every event. But it was fun.
Okay. So what were some of the early messages on some of the clothing?
One, they were simple, from like legalize hemp, but the design kind of blended that together.
Yeah.
One was what I thought, I don't know if it even is, but like a Chinese symbol for hemp on the front. And then on the back, I like went in the definition. I had one shirt that said "Save the Planet," but then the E was crossed out, so it was "Save the Plant," and I had a plant. But one of the shirts that I'm probably the proudest of is that it was 1998, and I know the Prop 215 had passed in '96 in California.
Yeah.
But I saw this old thing, and I created a shirt that on the front it said "Marijuana Medicine Shop." And on the back, it had all the things that you could use marijuana for. And I mean, I was basically advertising the idea of a dispensary. And it was just like a dream that I had. So yeah, that was cool. That's a cool shirt.
So
I gotta bring it back.
So pre-dispensary days,
That's right.
medical marijuana passes in California,
Yep.
and you've got the first dispensary.
That's right, on a
The only
t-shirt.
the only problem is it's on a T-shirt. That's exactly right.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Fantastic. Okay, so you've got the clothing thing going, and I asked you as we were walking to these microphones, where'd you go to school, and what was your answer to that?
Dropped out of high school my junior year. And I've always been an entrepreneur, though.
Yeah.
And there was I really, for some reason, wanted to buy a house. I've worked since I was 12. My parents just have a really strong work ethic.
Yeah.
And in Illinois, real estate is cheap, and especially back then. And I remember there was a house where this guy he died at about 105. It was 4 houses for my parents. It was 500 square feet. He had oil heat, like he just plugged a hot plate in for a stove, so
Oh.
it didn't have any, amenities and
Amenity. Your
yeah,
stove is an
whatever.
amenity.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was interested in buying it,
Yeah.
and one day his kids came by to appraise the house with an appraiser, and his kids were about 80 years old, 75 or 80.
Oh, right, because he's 105.
Yeah, so
So
I was
the
like,
kids are
"Whoa."
coming by.
So the appraiser goes through the house, and he says, "Yeah, it's worth about $29,000." And my dad, who's not a big negotiator or business person or anything, he said, "Well, would you take $22,000?"
Uh-huh.
And they said, "Sure." And he said, "Will you take a small down payment and let us pay monthly?" And they said, "Sure." And that got me into real estate. And then I ended up buying several homes after that.
Oh, you did do
Yeah,
that?
I ended up buying, bought and sold probably about 15 houses. So.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Is that an active interest or?
Well, it is, but it's been put to the side probably about 6 years ago for the cannabis industry,
Sure.
and because the California real estate market is ridiculous. So
Yeah.
it's going to take me a while to get back to buying real estate.
Got it. And there are a lot of things about California that are interesting, so we're going to try to get into
Oh, yeah.
a few of those.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. But dropping out of high school, was it because of what we already talked about, that ADHD, ADD thing?
Probably.
Right.
Probably. It was, I just didn't like the system so well, the school, and yeah, I just wanted to go a different route. I actually ended up going to community college before my class graduated high school.
Uh-huh.
And you were allowed to do that. It's just before you would graduate college, you would have to get your GED.
Right.
So I took classes for about almost about a year and a half, and then I started another business and just said, forget this.
What interests did you have for school? Like, what classes did you want to
well,
take?
you know what? I remember, and this was one of my first experiences into it, but political science was really good.
Yeah.
And just business.
Okay.
But it was business and politics. So
Yeah, so
I guess
you're-
I was on the right. And I was like, I've learned enough. I'm ready to go.
Here we go. So what business was it that you started?
I ended up buying, so I had a friend who is actually the cousin of my current cultivation partner,
Yeah.
but he was managing a store called Computer World, and not the big chain, but just that was the local name,
Uh-huh.
and they had a bunch of pager customers. And he said, hey, my boss wants to go out of business for $5,000. We can buy all his pager customers.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that sounds good, but these cell phones are like hot, and we gotta start selling this. And this is probably 15 years ago.
Yeah,
and,
at least, exactly.
And so we opened it up. And I named it. It was called Power Communications. And we started selling all different phone carriers from, Nextel, Primeco, all these Sprint, all these things.
Yeah.
And then we evolved into actually satellite TV, satellite installations. Then we started focusing on Dish Latino, and because the word of mouth in that culture was just off the charts.
Right.
I started putting little kiosks in malls,
Yeah.
and we became one of the top dealers.
Right.
But I just did not. I just did not have the passion for it, and that's what I just kind of spoke about in there.
Yeah.
I was like, I do not want to train salespeople to harass people about buying Dish Network TV anymore. Like I know I can do well with this,
Yeah.
but I have to go a different route.
Just real quick, there's been some voices and some
Yeah.
ancillary noises, and you just mentioned back there. So we're on site at the
All right.
Denver Convention Center
That's right.
for NCIA.
That's right.
And so you're going to hear a couple of different things. But you were just sitting on a panel,
Yep.
and which we want to get to, but we
Okay.
kind of want to get there. Chronologically.
Cool.
So that's so interesting. You have a successful business, right, in communications, which is just right on the front end of cell phones.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And you're like, I do not have a passion for this. And so what did you do? Did you sell yourself out? How did you?
Yeah, sort of. My partner at the time, he slowly bought me out and continued it, but he went to pursue, he's very academic, and he became an engineer and things like that, but the residuals kind of got him through school and
Okay.
paid me off, and
Okay.
he moved on to other things.
So he moved on as well.
He did.
All right.
He did.
So is Power Communications still operating, or?
Not really. It's possible because you can do it where he might have one installer that does 2 or 3 a month or
Okay.
something.
All right.
Kind of just riding it out.
Got it. So Power,
Company's gone.
Yeah, I got you. So Power Communications was in Illinois, or no?
Yep.
It was.
Yep.
Okay. And then what was next?
Then I went back to real estate.
So you're buying and selling houses.
Well, so Jayware, the hemp clothing company,
Yeah.
Overlapped with Power Communications, and I ended up giving up Jayware for Power Communications.
Uh-huh.
And then I ended up giving up Power Communications for real estate to focus on that full time.
Right.
And then I wanted to start working with real estate developers, and so I got my real estate license,
Yeah.
which I'll just say, like I said on the stage a minute ago,
Yeah.
I had a felony, a marijuana felony, and you were supposed to wait 10 years until you could be a licensed realtor in the state of Illinois.
Uh-huh.
But I guess this isn't like to be proud of, but I passed probation with flying colors, and my probation officer wrote a letter to the state
Right.
and said, hey, this is a good guy, let him get his license, and the state granted me a license, which
Great.
was good.
Yeah.
And then I was working as a realtor, and I felt like I was really good because I was used to buying property. A lot of realtors, that was their main income. They want to close the deal. I'm not trying to trash realtors, but
No.
they want to close the deal. That I looked at it more as an investment perspective, and I was kind of closing houses pretty quickly, and it was going well. But I remember 7 years ago or so telling the other realtors I was with, I think I'm going to move to California and get in this cannabis industry, and they were like, man, it's probably so saturated out there. There's no room to get in. It's not going to work out. And I was like, well, we'll see about that. So,
So you did. Where was that kernel? Obviously, it was from your youth and from your heart.
Well, yeah, I can tell you exactly. So I would watch like Donnie Deutsch a lot.
Okay.
He had a show, The Big Idea.
Right.
And he was constantly like, find your passion, find your passion. And, people listening can't see this, but I was basically smoking a joint going, what is he talking? What is my passion? I have no idea. What does he mean it's right under my nose? I have no idea what he's talking about. And then all of a sudden I saw Richard Lee on CNBC doing the show Marijuana Inc. Richard Lee from Oaksterdam. And the most impressive thing I heard him say was, I paid $500,000 to the federal government in taxes last year. And it just blew my mind. And I said, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I need to do. I need to immerse myself in the cannabis industry, and I'm doing it. And I never thought about moving. I never thought about anything. And so I have a wife, 2 daughters. Yeah. They're 9 and 14 now, so they were, young. And I remember telling my wife, like, we're gonna move to California. I'm gonna get in the industry. And she looked at me like, what? And she has a big family back there.
Yeah.
And basically, later she was crying a little bit. And I was like, why are you crying? She's like, because I know you're serious. Like,
Right.
You're serious about this. And she said, well, go out there and make it happen. And then, we'll move, like travel, go do your thing.
Right.
And so for about a year or two, I was traveling and back and forth from California to Illinois.
Right.
And I can get more into that. But yeah, and it worked, and then my family moved out there, and they're happy.
Yeah, so let's talk more about a couple things, though. So Richard Lee tells you about his ridiculous tax bill, and that's what makes you want to get in.
Well, because I realized it was legitimate.
I see.
Like, I was like,
Okay.
if he's doing that, wow, there's a real industry there.
Okay. So everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
I can do it.
Yeah.
I see.
Because I really didn't know what was happening in
Right.
California.
Right.
But
well, no one still does unless you're there.
exactly. No, I don't. I have no idea what's going on.
You still don't know you're there. Exactly.
I don't know.
All right. So let's talk about this wonderful woman that is your wife, right?
Yes.
So where did you meet her?
Oh, I met my wife when we were like middle school. Well, I told you I've always worked, and when I was 15, I had a work permit or whatever, and I was working at a grocery store.
Huh.
And her mom worked in the deli or whatever, and her friends would come around. And anyway, we ended up meeting there, and I went. I moved out of my house, like I said, when I was 16 or so, and
Right.
kind of did some crazy stuff. And but her and I reunited back when I was 19.
Okay.
Been together ever since.
So the whole time type of thing.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
And how did you know? Because she knew before you did, because women are smarter. That's right. The women are smarter. But,
Well, when I moved out, I had a crazy relationship with a crazy partner, and my wife is very stable. She has her stuff together. She's basically not crazy, and that had a lot to do with it. So she's a good woman. She's a good woman from a good family, and truthfully, I thought, I've always been busy and I've always been an entrepreneur, and I just wanted that. I didn't want to run around and chase women, and just didn't have time for all that. And I wanted, and I knew she'd be good, like, to settle down with and everything, and so it was great.
And it turned out.
Yeah.
Turned out all
got
right.
An awesome wife.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about the year of back and forth.
Yeah.
So when you get to LA, you're like, okay, I'm here.
Well, so what it
you
was
get off
is,
the bus, just like Guns N' Roses
Yeah, there you
video,
go.
I guess. Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's a lot like that. I came to the West Coast with a dream.
Uh-huh.
But to back it up a little, when I was 11 years old, I met this kid who was also 11, and we pretty much became really close friends, and now we're best of friends. And he did this journey with me.
Oh.
But when we were about maybe 10 or 15 years ago, he ended up hooking up with my wife's sister, and now they're married and they have kids. So my best friend since I was 11 is now my brother-in-law.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool. And so him and I, his wife she was pregnant, and so he had to convince her.
Yeah.
And so we're like, look, we're gonna go to California and check this thing out. And so we first went to Oaksterdam, and it was in Los Angeles, and Jeff Jones was there, and some other industry leaders, and I basically harassed Jeff until he gave me some good advice in that. And he said, go to Oakland, and then we ended up going to like Oakland ASA conferences, and I actually ran into Steve D'Angelo there.
There you go.
And that started a lot of things. But what was the biggest thing was we were at a NORML conference in San Francisco, 2008, I think, and Kyle Cushman, he was the senior cultivation editor at High Times. Tyler and I met him in 1998 in Amsterdam. So he had just got hired at High Times, and we had just been there for the first time. We connected, hung out for a few days. So fast forward to 2008, saw him at a conference, reconnected with him. Yeah. And this is like the greatest thing. So we're just two dudes from Illinois, and this is Kyle Cushman, master cultivator from High Times. And so we hang out for a little bit, and he's like, hey, you want to go to the room and smoke? We're like, yeah, we go smoke in the room. And he's like, hey, sorry, guys, but I am in my 10th week of flower, and I got to drive back up home right now to take care of my crop.
Right.
And we're like, oh, okay. And he's like, excuse me, I got to use the bathroom. So he goes in the bathroom, and I look at Tyler, and I said, dude, we should help him with his crop.
Let's go.
And but he's looking at me like, because we're from Illinois, nobody shows anybody their crop. He's not going to do that. I was like, well, he just said he's got it. Like, no one does that back in Illinois either. So he came back, and I said, what, you need some help with your crop? And he looked at us and goes, you guys would do that? And we're like, yeah.
Ding.
So, so call my wife. Hey, we're not coming home for a few days. And we end up, and I have all this, like, chronologically in pictures. So I took all these pictures like on the way up there at his house, on the way back. And so we're driving up there, and it's beautiful. It's Mendocino. It's got this awesome deck with a view. And we get there, and we were just blown away. It's the best pot we've ever had. He opens this thing in his floor and jump down. It's like an 8-light grow room underground. And all these plants are in full flower, and it's like 12 different strains of the awesomest stuff I've ever seen. And Tyler ends up working with him. I left there. He helped him trim it and cut it up. And then we decide, look, we want to learn from him. We want to do this, so let's rent a house here. So we ended up renting a house in Willits, specifically in Brook Trails, which is kind of well known for the cannabis movement. And we got a place there, and Tyler learned to cultivate from him while I was kind of checking out the industry, trying to find out what I wanted to do, and eventually it led to I remember telling Cushman, like, and he tells the story sometimes, I said, I'm going to get a dispensary, and I'm going to get us a place to sell all this good stuff, and not only your good stuff, but all the everybody else, all their good stuff too. And he's like, all right, I've heard it before, but let's see. And within like 6 months I had buds and roses.
So. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the Emerald Triangle, right?
Yeah, that's where we were.
Fantastic. And so within 6 months you had the dispensary, but wait, let's go back to when you met Steve D'Angelo, because you said a couple other things happened there. Well,
So that was pretty like magical, the whole thing going forward. So I heard his speech about responsible dispensary operations and how crucial it was on the airplane going there to a San Francisco NORML meeting. And I remember telling Tyler all about it, how excited I was. And we went back, but then there was the ASA thing in Oakland, and we went there a couple weeks later. And I guess Steve walked by me, and Tyler smacked me. He was like, hey, that's that guy Steve. So I remember I go up to, hey, my name's Aaron Justis. I'm from the Chicago area, and I really like what you do, and whatever I said. He's like, okay, yeah, stay in touch. And I was like, okay. And then I went back home, and it was so weird. I had left the gym, and I was like at Starbucks or something, and somebody, and this was just totally random, somebody knocks on the glass on my window, and I look over, and he's like, hey, you remember me? And I was like, no. And he said, oh, I'm old friends with Connor, and he's living in D.C. now, and you should maybe talk to him or something, or whatever it was. I was like, okay. So I call this guy Connor I hadn't seen in like 5 years, and he's like, yeah, I'm working on the marijuana thing out here in D.C. And I was like, well, stay in touch.
Yeah.
So a few days goes by, and he calls me. He says, hey, have you ever heard of this guy? Oh, I can't think of his name. He's got like braids on the side, and I was like, Steve D'Angelo.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I guess he's coming here, and he's going to do all this stuff. It's going to be a big deal. I was like, whoa, that's awesome. All right, I'm going to come for sure. And I remember I called Steve, and I said, hey, are you going to D.C.? And he said, yeah. I said, well, where are you staying? He said, Continental Hotel. And that's where I'm staying. I'm like, book my hotel. And so I remember he said, okay, let's meet.
Right.
I saw him speak, things like that. And remember I went to his hotel room. We kind of sat there across from each other. And he said, so why do you want to get in this industry? And I said, I don't want to say I love the plant. And he kind of started smiling. And I was like, but I love it. And I was like, my whole life. And he's just like cheesing, and he's just so happy. And, he tells me that he talked to a lot of people. Like, I heard hundreds of people, and they just couldn't find the correct match with what they were trying to do because they were getting a consulting group launched.
Uh-huh.
And he ended up saying, yeah, I'll work with you. I'll help you, get a dispensary. And he had a really strong group. It was him, Eric Pearson, who owns Spark, Don Duncan, ASA, BP, all the things he's been involved with, James Anthony, Robert Jacob, who owns Peace and Medicine, also a mayor.
Yep.
And so I had these 5 amazing guys
That's ridiculous.
in their whole team.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and they were like, yeah, we'll help you. And so I started looking in Washington, D.C. for a permit.
Right.
Started looking at Los Angeles for a permit.
Right.
And they basically just helped me put it together and move forward. And
This is that initial group that Chris Crane talked about.
yeah,
right?
you know what? Chris Crane was like my go-to guy. I
Right.
did not mean to let him out. He wasn't one of the principals, but he was.
And not at the time. He said that. Yeah. No.
Yeah, but he is like the most active on it.
Right.
Nothing but respect for him. He's amazing. So he was my main contact.
There you go.
Yeah.
And those are the guys that helped you kind of figure out how to get Buds and Roses.
Well, and then when I got Buds and Roses, Steve sent a couple of his main guys from Harborside, Elon and Goose, and these guys just guided me. They were just on how my security should treat people, how it should feel, and it only went on for a couple weeks. But I mean, I was like a sponge, and I just soaked it all up, and I love that model, and it's been great for us.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about though the actual acquisition.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
what happened?
So actually, so I wanted to find a good cannabis lawyer, and I did research, and I came up with Robert Raich in Oakland, and he had been in the Supreme Court twice, the only lawyer in the Supreme Court for cannabis, and so it led me to him. He actually had a client in Los Angeles, a single mom, the woman I was talking about, who had done her paperwork correctly, but just didn't have a business mind. No one knew what the place was, and it was very, very low revenue. I mean, actually, in 2009, it was $40,000 in sales
for the year.
Okay. For the year. So we ended up I basically ended up joining the board of directors, and just took it from there.
Got it. And then with the machinations and everything
right.
like that. Okay. So you kept the name though.
Yeah, and and that's interesting because I didn't want to keep the name. I said, look, this is not very medical. This isn't Los Angeles Healthcare Center.
Right.
This doesn't make sense. It's way too recreational. We're gonna get raided by the DEA. But then people liked it, and and everybody was like, oh, it's a cool name.
Yeah.
And then when I ended up making the logo, and then we won. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, that's fine. But you're talking about the name, so you made the logo, and that's kind of when you realized.
Yeah, our reputation had been built for a wellness center in LA that was kind of proud of what we did.
Yeah.
Then, then we created the logo, and then we the first ever Los Angeles High Times Cannabis Cup came to town.
Okay.
And we ended up entering and winning in every category. And so they were like, oh, it's Michael Phelps again. And I had 5 medals around my neck. And and then after that we came out with the logo, and it just exploded from there.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've subsequently done okay in terms of cups.
Yeah. We've won more medical cannabis cup awards than anyone
on the earth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. So, and it started in that first year.
Yeah. Well, actually, we won one in San Francisco in 2011, and then 5 in LA, and then it went from there.
Okay, great. Excellent. All right, so you've got the medals. Now you've got the logo, and you're up and running.
Yep.
Right? And then everything runs perfectly in California, and there's nothing else to talk about, right?
Yeah, until they ban all dispensaries a year later.
Well, so right. So okay, so you're doing well, and
Yeah.
Had there been any interaction with any of the authorities, or from winning the medals to that next kind of
Yeah, we've managed to have a good reputation, and we have not had those issues.
Right.
But it still has been, I mean, a terror. Like the roller coaster ride has been crazy.
We'll talk about the first interaction.
Well, just one thing is I remember we had a cultivator for us, and we had a small grow, and it was literally like 8 lights, and it was so gray market area and unregulated that he was threatening to call the police on our grow that was supplying our dispensary, and we were scared because you could get arrested for that.
Sure.
Even 5 years ago. Now we're just, we feel better about our cultivation and all that. But it was just little things like that. And he was like, if you guys don't, pay me $1,000, I'm going to tell I'm going to have your grow busted. And that was a concern for us. And part of, being a legal collective in LA is a 10-year felony background check. So, we can't risk any kind of criminal penalties. Now, the industry's advanced more. The DEA's not there, messing with everybody, and the state's attorney, the city attorney's not all over it. So it's definitely a better climate. But what happened was, in 2007, we did something remarkable because of the lack of experience of regulators. A local advocate, Don Duncan, back in about 2006, 2007, dispensaries started popping up in LA, and he found a champion in City Council of LA, actually an ex-police officer, Dennis Zine, to float a resolution that actually grandfathered in almost 200 dispensaries, and no one's ever done that since. And there was no application process back. It was like, whoever will come forward, you're it. And that's why it was like people that were willing to put their neck on the line, activists. It wasn't like business people.
Sure.
So that's just kind of how the industry's evolved. So that was great. Because of their lack of experience, they just let that go through. That was great. But since then, their lack of experience we've seen, and they've written many poor ordinances that the opposition, other dispensaries that weren't included, have sued the city upon and been successful. So failed ordinance. You get to 2012, and we have a city council member that makes a bigger deal out of it than it is and says, we need to ban all dispensaries. This is crazy, blah, blah, blah. And the city council, we worked hard to try to stop that. My neighborhood council is the most active in Los Angeles. That's the Studio City Neighborhood Council. Neighborhood council just reports to the city council because it's such a big city.
Right.
And they supported us, but in the end, the city council banned all dispensaries. Well, good thing Don Duncan was there again in our coalition. But we formed a coalition with the UFCW, big union that saw LA as the biggest market of cannabis workers in the country. ASA, and then GLACA, that's our local dispensary association that I'm on the trade steering committee of, formed a coalition. We overturned the ban almost instantly, and then we forced the city of LA, or we encouraged them, and they did it, to write a workable ordinance, and they actually did it. And so
how did you overturn that ban before we get to
we raised a lot. So we quickly met together.
Yeah.
Don had already wrote the referendum before they even enacted the ban. He pretty much knew they might do it.
Right.
So it was ready to go. And then the operators got together, maybe about 50 or 60 of the original 100 and some. And we got organized. We would meet at the union place. They kind of guided the meetings. And we raised a lot of money. And we hired the best signature company we could. And that's how we got the signatures, and that's how we overturned the ban.
Perfect.
And then we could have waited. Now, and it said, okay, now the city has to regulate. So at that time, we were like, they're either, even though it says they could do it, they could drag this out forever. So we need to decide right now, are we going to lobby them to do it, or are we just going to now put up more money and do another initiative?
Right.
And I mean, we raised like over $1 million between everybody, and just
Amazing.
Everybody was in it. And we ended up writing an ordinance, putting it on the ballot. But then our opposition, who had way more money, way more people, should have defeated us, but they just weren't as politically savvy. They didn't know how to do it. They put up an initiative.
Right.
So now you have 2 initiatives. Now in theirs, it was crazy, but they included a 6% gross sales tax for the city. So then all of a sudden, the city says, you know what? We kind of like your ordinance, ours.
Yeah.
We don't like theirs, but
Okay.
they have a tax.
Yeah.
So we're going to make our own. So it's basically was like ours
Yeah.
with a 6% gross sales tax.
Okay. With the VIG, if you will.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so we said, well, you know what? Great, we'll drop ours, support yours. But there were three different measures on the ballot, and it was D, E, and F. And we were like, how are they ever going to know the difference?
Yeah.
But through the union and through us being politically smart, which meant we went after like organizations and groups of votes, we ended up passing the cities with 62% of the vote. And I think it's just a huge, like more than the mayor, and I think that's just a huge message that even when you have the worst out of control situation of dispensaries, the sky doesn't fall.
Right.
And the people that live there don't even care.
Right.
They're like, look, just make it like 200 dispensaries, not 1,200, and we'll be okay.
Exactly.
And the other rules are like, pay your city tax, be 1,000 feet from schools.
Right.
And that's it.
That's all you got to
So
do,
it's
really,
like-
right?
Yeah, so we need to find a balance because our supply chain is totally unregulated, and
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
was that's what kind of brings us into the current atmosphere, right? Of between 2013 and 2015, we're here in June of 2015.
Yep.
The past couple of years, it's kind of been calm with certainly some closures.
Yes. Yes.
Along the way. Why do you think if it's been calm, there also have been closures? What's the key there?
Well, the one thing is a big part of Proposition D is to close the illegal collectives that aren't qualified under Proposition D.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of that is still needed. There's hundreds of illegal operators still. So where you don't have a lot of vacancies, like in Studio City, and where you have a good neighborhood council, we've worked strongly with them, and we don't have a lot of illegal operators, if any, in our area. But if you go to somewhere that has a lot of vacancies, they're just everywhere, and they pop up everywhere. And we definitely need, because those tax dollars that we pay, that 6% gross, should go towards enforcement.
Sure.
And we do want to get the regulated shops up and running and close down the other ones so that the city can pull in the right amount of revenue from the taxes, they can appreciate it, and then they can move forward with new regulations.
Right.
And right now, so what we operate under is really the worst regulatory system in all of California. It's called limited immunity.
Uh-huh.
So we're not even really approved. It's just if they want to prosecute us, we have to prove our limited immunity in court. The bigger problem with that is that we're not licensed from the city until we go through a process like that. And with state law passing, they don't want to vet us and make us like, are you Prop D? Are you this? Are you that?
Right.
So we're trying to create another new system in Los Angeles that will put us in a better place so that we can flow into the statewide regulation.
How so?
Well, but the truth is
Okay.
that as these statewide regulations the bills are going through,
Yeah.
our city attorney constantly says exempt LA, and the state legislators are like, okay. And the reason is
Yeah.
Los Angeles is gigantic.
Yeah.
Like it is the 9th largest economy in the world.
Uh-huh.
It has
Los Angeles is?
Los Angeles, the
I did
city.
not know that.
4 million people. Our city council members, they're the highest paid in the country, but they make twice as much as our state legislators and their city council members. Our city council members make more money than United States Congress members. And some of them represent more people than senators of small states.
That's believable.
Yeah. So it's great. No, they make about $179,000 a year. Congress makes $174,000.
Wow.
And state legislators make about $90,000.
Yeah,
so
we got to
it's
nominate you for city council. Right?
yeah, right. That's what I gotta do. Get a job there. You can go 12 years
Yeah,
too.
that's it.
So, but they want to control things on their level. I think that given the structure we've been given in California, since there is no guidance from the state level,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be very wise or productive for us to fly up to Sacramento all the time to get them to fix LA.
Yeah.
It's really like an LA issue, and we have to focus there. And it is, only 15 council members versus 120 state legislators. And
So let's
Yeah.
talk about what you guys were talking about on the panel, and
Yeah.
everybody's got eyes on California, and so take us through at least your perspective on where you are with state regulations.
Well, we have been trying very hard the last few months to pass something statewide for medical in California. It just does not look like it's going that well or that it's going to pass.
Okay.
And again, a lot of this has to do with the state legislators. It should be their issue, but it's not. And they choose to ignore it. And localities would love to ignore it too, except when dispensaries start popping up and they have to deal with it. So the state legislators just aren't that into it. And we don't get very far with them. So now we'll see what happens. August 28th is the last day that they could make this happen. We'll go into next year, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I'd like to say, yeah, adult use is going to pass in 2016, but it's very possible it does not pass, or that it's just written in a way that the current industry just doesn't support it and kills it. I doubt it, though. There's a lot of unity right now, so hopefully it's written properly.
So let's talk about how it's written before we talk about the fact that you're slightly bearish compared to every single other person that we've spoken to.
Yeah.
With the exception of Juliana from Auntie Dolores, who is
Yeah.
also from where? California.
In the same working groups, yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So as far as what needs to be written, she talked about the outdoor growth, and you guys talked about that on the panel.
Yep.
What else are the keys to make sure that everybody, including the growers, are behind this?
Yeah, well, I think the one thing to point out is that we already have a current industry that's working. It's not working excellent, but it's working, and people have, multi-million-dollar businesses. And if you get licensing at the local level, even in today's market, it can be just as good as a state level. Now, going forward with adult use and really expanding the industry is everybody's dream, but the worst case situation is continue to move forward how we already are.
Right.
So I think what it really comes down to in 2016 is if the language doesn't support the current industry, which represents the current patient base, and it makes things more difficult there or takes away rights that we have now, if that goes too far, then that's when you would see opposition to it.
So there's an operating industry, and Steve mentioned sometimes you've got folks that have been doing this for 3 generations. There's an operating industry. You also mentioned, though, that the supply chain's slightly wacky. So where can we fix and where should we stay away as far as regulations?
Well, yeah, the biggest thing we need to do is cultivation permits. There's basically none in all of California, and it just makes things really difficult. I just told you a story about the small grow that we have, but what happens now with the larger grows is they're very similar. People can't just hire whoever they want. They're nervous about, even if they can defend their grow in court, it's still you never know how law enforcement is going to act about it. So basically, we need to find places that are going to give cultivation permits, and we're trying to work on it, but who knows?
So that's a sticky point.
Yeah.
Anything else that is at that level of we need to figure that out?
Yeah, I would say, well, one thing about the farmers, and I mentioned it up there a little bit, I actually heard, so there's a group that represents farmers, EGA.
Yeah, sure.
And I heard that now they have hundreds of 500 or 600 farmers that they're representing.
Right.
And that's encouraging to see. And a lot of these small growers are why California has such great cannabis and these boutique growers. And we need to just keep that alive and make sure that there's a licensing system for them and not ban small cultivators.
Yeah.
It's just part of the California culture.
And Hezekiah Allen, who heads that
Hezekiah,
up,
that's right.
will be on eventually.
Right. Awesome.
This was originally his spot, and
I took it.
Yeah. Well, but he's also dealing with what
bad stuff.
Always dealing with something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, things are not good right now in
Well,
Northern California.
talk about that.
Well, I just saw the headlines for it, and I've heard people talk about it. It just looks like they went up north and took down a lot of cannabis, which, again, could be put into the California medical market, and they arrested a few people. And it's...
On what grounds? Like what? I know you just read the headlines, but...
Yeah, I think it's just like, conspiracy, cannabis cultivation, things like that.
Okay.
And that's the problem, though. We're in an unregulated marketplace. Well, where, of course, that's going on, and it's okay until someone wants to arrest you for it,
Right.
it seems like.
Sure. And so then that does bring up kind of, hey, guys, this thing might not pass because look at what we're still dealing with on a day-to-day basis, including today. So we've talked to Betty Aldworth, who's got SSDP, and pushing people in there. We've talked to Steve Fox and the Vicente Cedarberg crew.
Yeah.
And they're certainly active.
Yeah, he's even helping us in California.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yep,
Yeah. So
yep.
everybody's kind of pushing resources to California. You know, how likely is it that this doesn't pass? How likely is it that it does? In other words, where are you? It's June 2015. Where are you as far as your bet on it?
Well, I would bet it passes.
Okay. Reluctantly positive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because the actual language doesn't come out, it'll probably come out in the next couple months.
Okay.
So that's going to have everything to do with it. And they are resisting a bit because they want to see what happens at the state level. But I think right now they're probably going to release the language pretty soon.
Okay.
And then that's going to determine everything.
And you can't have more of the top talent in the industry focused on California. I mean,
Everybody's focused on it. Yeah. Yeah. And they've done some serious polling. It's not public yet. I think that, but the polling did worry some. And that's why we have to worry about 2016, because although the major cities are real liberal, there's a lot of conservative areas, and it's weird. The other big thing about legalization in California has always been that for so many people, it's already legal, so it's not a desperate situation.
Right.
You know, the industry can see how we're lacking, but the common folk is like, "What are you talking about? I can get it. I've been buying this stuff for 15 years here." So
we got to educate
the motivation just isn't. Yeah. And all you can tell them is it could be better, and they're
Well, that's not.
Right.
We'll talk to Steve and Mason and maybe even Rob Campy about coming up with a better kind of term for you.
It could be better.
It could be better. It's not going to do it.
I don't know. I kind of like it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's nice. I can see maybe make it on a T-shirt. That
will
might
be better. Yeah.
There we go. It will be better.
There you
that's
go, yeah.
that's better. That's,
Yeah.
And it's also safer, as we know. Right?
That's right.
If we're talking better and safer,
Better
and better. How about
That's
that?
right. That's right.
With like a little ampersand in the middle there.
I like it.
Safer and better.
Yeah,
Come on. All
that's
right. So we're making headway.
That's right.
All right. So I would love to talk to you for the rest of the day, but
Okay.
a couple things you have
We might
stuff
have
to
to
do,
eat.
and
Yeah.
we got to eat and stuff like that. So let's kind of focus in on final questions. But before we do that, there's so much more to talk about, and we hope we can do that again in the future. Anything along the path or anything along the way in terms of, the march to 2016 that we haven't covered that we should? Do we miss anything, at least the big tent poles?
I think you got it. I mean, the big thing is that it starts at a micro to macro level. So everyone is trying to get their localities in line. And what I mean by that is just trying to get some kind of system going so that the dispensaries there, because there's dispensaries operating in a lot of cities that don't have any legitimacy yet, even though they're allowed to operate. They don't have a permit. And if you don't have that at the time legalization passes, then you're not going to be like getting the provisional license to be grandfathered in. So a lot of people are working at the local level trying to get all that stuff cleared up and straight.
Yeah.
And then we were trying to get the statewide medical pass before the adult use, and I don't know how that's going to go. And then the federal stuff, even beyond the state, always plays a role.
Sure.
And so we have to pay attention to what's going on there and how that's going to affect things. So that's all it is, just a game of politics. I spend a great deal of my time doing political work, just like most of the responsible operators in California.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So you got a lot to do.
Yep. Yep. The one thing I would say is similar to what Steve said on the stage earlier about camaraderie, and that there's more unity now in California than there ever has been.
Yeah.
So that means that all the stakeholders are at the table, and everybody seems pretty good with what everybody else wants. It all kind of goes in line together.
Yeah.
So that's the most encouraging thing. Now it's just that what we want will poll well, so that the people paying for it will add in what we want.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, no, growers, dispensaries, everybody's kind of on the same page.
Pretty much.
Which was not the case for Prop 19.
Correct.
So at
Correct.
least there's that.
Exactly.
All right. So final questions. We kind of ask the same thing every time. For you, it might be difficult because you've been doing this for quite a while in your life to separate the two. But what has most surprised you in cannabis, and what has most surprised you in life? Those are the two final questions. And so, what has most surprised you in cannabis, Aaron Justis?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess throughout my entire life that I've been involved with cannabis, I've really not gotten negativity over it. And I even when I lived in Illinois, and I think it has to do with I have a sense of pride about it. I think it's important, but I meet other people who are in the cannabis world and they think in the back of their mind that it's bad and they hide it from people. And then when they do talk to people about it, they get a reaction of, oh, that's not good, you should get out of it. So it just surprised me that people actually are into it. They just want to hear an intelligent voice, and they want to hear someone that's proud of it. And people are pretty much for it. That I've met, conservatives, everything, if you deliver the message in the proper way.
Yeah, with pride and confidence.
With pride and confidence.
All right. Which is, by the way, the new dispensary you guys are working on.
That's right.
Buds and Roses, pride and confidence.
That's right.
What's most surprised you in life?
Just that, when you have like a dream and you focus on it and you immerse yourself in it and you go for it, that the universe works with you. And it is just amazing every day where you feel like you have this support system where things just kind of fall into place. And don't get me wrong, with tons of negative things that happen, but I'm a true believer in, there's no success at bargain basement prices, or no stone is smooth without friction. So at least that's what I tell myself. Right. And so I've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, but when you stick it through, when you're passionate, when you love something, things just seem to work out.
And they're working out for you. And again, with reluctant positivity, it sounds like they're working out for California.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Aaron Justis. So there you have it, Aaron Justis, Buds and Roses. And you can tell that is one of the voices, one of the minds that is leading the way in the cannabis space. We very much appreciate Aaron's time. Look forward to checking in with him down the line with how everything goes in the great state of California.